All right, well, welcome to our directors meeting. As I mentioned, it's a little different today. It's 2 o'clock on a Tuesday, so different than our 12:30 Mondays. October is always unique that way because of the Indigenous people holiday that we had yesterday for the state office. But we're glad that you're here. Glad that you can join us for our directors meeting. Jennifer Lambert, our director, does send her apologies. She has another meeting today, so she's unable to join us. So we won't have an update from her, but we will just jump right into our agenda. And we will turn the time over to Shannon Greer, who's here from the Charter Association, to announce some upcoming trainings and other things you might want to be aware of from the association. And so Shannon, we'll turn the time to you.
Thank you. Excuse me. So we have a couple of upcoming trainings, and while the trainings are identified for a specific group or section of people, we want to make sure that everyone understands they're open to anyone who would like to participate or anyone who feels they might benefit from that particular training. So the first one we have is October 19th. And that is going to be our next admin seminar during lunchtime. So from 12 o'clock to 1. And that training will focus on conducting effective teacher evaluations. So if you're a new administrator, or if this is the first time that you'll be doing that in your role, this would be a great training for you to participate in. The second training that we have coming up will be for our pre-operational school, and that's on October 25th at 7 p.m. And the focus of that training will be establishing governing boards. So again, if you are currently an administrator, or if you would like to have your board chair or anyone from your board join us, please feel free to pass that information along. We'd love to have anybody who's interested join us for those two trainings. And then also, if you are, we've got our mentors out in force, and a lot of our mentors are working with new directors. We've got several working with new board members. If working with a mentor is something that you would like to do, please shoot me an email. We'll make that connection and make sure that you get the support that you need. Thank you, Marie, for giving me the chance to share those things with this group.
Perfect. Thank you, Shannon. We appreciate that. Okay. Well, since we are running a little ahead because Jennifer was unable to join us, one thing that I thought would be super helpful to our directors was our new support specialist, Lisa Cooper, led a training last week for our business managers. And she went over just the financial metrics that we look at every year. And I know when I was a director, I wasn't always completely aware of those, or, sometimes I just kind of forgot. And so I thought it'd be really great to have that refresher. Maybe you've seen them before, maybe you haven't, but either way, we'll all get on that same page here, and Lisa will present about those financial metrics. And so we'll turn the time to her. And Lisa, I'll go ahead and watch for who's coming in and watch chat box for you while you present. So take it away.
Great, thanks. Alrighty, so let me share my screen. Okay, so as Marie said, last week we presented to the finance managers a short presentation, and I just wanted to go ahead and share that with you as well. So basically it was an annual financial overview for them. We started off with a few things for them to remember. The first of these was the USBE Fall Financial Training, which is taking place on Friday, October 21st from 9 a.m. to 5 a.m. There's a Zoom link there. So they have access to that on the recorded meeting from last week too, but it's there just in case you want to go look at it again later to find it. The next thing we shared with them was the Utah Public Education Financial Systems report due dates. The first of these is coming, or the next one coming up is November 30th, which is when the fiscal year 2022 audit reports are due. Indirect cost data is due on December 15th, and the federal single audit report and deferred revenue need to be uploaded by December 31st. The next is in regard to the review of facilities contracts or financing agreements for charter schools. So the Utah Code provides that charter schools that are seeking to enter into a lease agreement, a contract, or any other kind of agreement regarding school facilities need to submit that agreement to the charter school's authorizer, as well as an attorney for review and advice prior to entering into that agreement. To facilitate this statutory requirement, the State Charter Schools Board has provided a facility review policy and a facility review procedure. The policy is basically, if you have such an agreement that you want to enter into it, you need to submit it to the Charter School Board, the State Charter School Board, for review. And the review procedure, basically, it's a form and some other documents that you need to upload onto UCAP for that review. And that link there provides all the information on how that takes place and where to send it and all those things, documents and everything. Okay. Next, now we'll talk about our financial review performance indicators. So the objectives of this short presentation are just to get you familiar with what the indicators are and how they're calculated, understand what they measure and what the standard is for each of the indicators, as well as what the financial indicators point to. And then we'll have some time for questions if you'd like to ask them. The first one is the unrestricted days cash on hand. This is measured by, or the formula for it is unrestricted cash plus cash equivalents times 365. This number is then divided by total operating expenses minus the annual depreciation. And what this measures is how long in days a school could meet its operating expenses without receiving any new income. The standard for this measurement is to maintain at least 30 days unrestricted cash on hand. And if a school were to end up dropping below the 30 days cash on hand, then it's likely that you might not be able to operate for more than a few weeks without receiving a new cash inflow. And that puts the school at high risk for immediate financial difficulties. So that's why that's so important. The debt to asset ratio is the formula for this one is total liabilities divided by total assets. What this measures is the extent to which a school is relying on borrowed funds to finance its operations. The standard for this is to maintain a debt to asset ratio of less than or equal to 1. A low ratio on this indicator indicates that the bulk of the school's assets are being funded with equity, and that indicates that the school is in a healthy position, whereas a higher ratio here would show that the assets are being funded with debt, and that would indicate that the school might not be able to pay back its debts as they come due. The next one is the current ratio. It's calculated by dividing current assets by current liabilities. And this indicates the school's ability to pay its obligations over the next 12 months. The standard here is to maintain a current ratio of greater than or equal to 1 with a positive trend. And a higher ratio here means that the school is more liquid, which means that it has cash on hand to meet its upcoming cash on hand or readily available to meet its upcoming expenses. And that is an indication of a financially healthy school. The next one is the multi-year cash flow. And basically what this measures is the change in cash from one period to another. The standard here is a multi-year and current year that are positive. And a positive cash flow over time generally indicates the increasing financial health of the school, as well as its sustainability, which is great because we want you guys around in perpetuity. So that's why that one's important. Okay, total margin. This is calculated by dividing change in net assets by total revenue. This measures whether the school is living within its available resources. And the standard here is to maintain a 5-year aggregated total margin. Now, there may be a year where a school ends up operating at a deficit. In situations like this, you want to make sure if it does happen, these situations should be strategically planned and should be for larger operating expenses or some other planned expense. But you want to make sure these are planned situations as much as you can. And however, when this total margin is measured over a period of time, a healthy school is going to have a positive total margin. And the last one is audit findings. Your audit findings, basically what the state's looking here for is looking for here is material weaknesses in internal controls, as well as related party transactions. So obviously your standard here would be to have no material audit findings. If the school were to have material audit findings, that would indicate that the school doesn't have systems in place to minimize the risk of financial mismanagement, and that can be potentially devastating for a school. So it's really important you make sure that your controls are good so you don't have these. Great, that was it. That was just simple and quick. And if you have any questions, be happy to answer whatever I can.
Great job, Lisa. I don't see any questions in chat right now. If anyone is typing that in, please feel free to keep typing, or you can always unmute and ask a question, and we're happy to take those here. All right, well, we'll keep moving along. Our training topic today is leadership for effective change. And this was a topic that was requested by our school directors with that year-end survey. And so as your authorizer, our job is to provide those technical assistance pieces, things that you request, things that you're interested in. That is our obligation to then be able to help you with those things. So today's training is about leadership for effective change, and it's adapted from a presentation called Becoming a Change Leader that is available on Pluralsight. So if you love it and want to know more, definitely check that out if you have a Pluralsight license. Okay. So the first thing we're going to talk about as we get into leadership for effective change are a couple of facts. The presenter brought up that change is constant, and whether that's big changes like we saw with the pandemic, whether that's small changes like maybe there's some road construction on your morning route to work, or the store was sold out of your favorite cereal, there's always changes all around us. So change is a constant that all of us live with. And that when we are trying to make those transformative changes, data shows that around 70% of all transformation efforts fail. Those could be both personal as well as professional. But when we're trying to make those big changes, sometimes we have a hard time with that. And so going into this presentation, thinking about the fact that change is constant, however, a lot of times those transformative efforts fail, we're going to try to look at what are some things we can do to help mitigate that failure number and really lean into that constant change, but doing it in a successful way that leads your school in a direction that you would like to take them. So there are three key ideas that we're going to work with here. The first idea is that to be able to have successful changes, we have to begin with ourselves. The second is that we're going to inspire change with key behaviors. And the third, we'll review how to sustain those changes. So as we get into the begin with ourselves, the first quote that I wanted to share here says, the more a leader knows how they will react during change, the better equipped they'll be to foster real change in themselves, others, and the organization. I pointed out how change is constant and how we're continuously dealing with changes. Again, some are big, some are small. So one thing to recognize in that is that you are an expert at change. You have literally survived every change that has come your way. Everything life has thrown at you, you have made it this far. You've done a great job. And so recognizing that strength that you have can be, a first piece on this. So recognizing that that you are a rock star and that you can own that and that you have that knowledge that you need to make yourself and your organization better. The next thing that we want to look at with that is how do we react during change? So that requires some reflection. When changes do come up, especially at our schools, with our students, with our staff, are we quick to get stressed out? Do we kind of want to retreat and spend some time, quiet in our office? Do we like to get busy and do other things? And so the first piece as we reflect on that is what we are doing during those changes will help us to understand the pieces that we then need to put into play to help sustain change in the long run. So as we're looking at, what is our response? How do we react when change comes up? We begin to see that growth mindset becomes really essential in this process. If you've read any of Carol Dweck's publishings about growth mindset, she has a lot of great things to say on that. This quote that I put here, it says, in a growth mindset, people believe that their most basic abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work. Brains and talent are just the starting point. This view creates a love of learning and a resilience that is essential for great accomplishment. So again, reflecting on what do you do when a change comes up? Does it make you angry? Does it make you retreat? Do you lean in and embrace it? Recognizing with that growth mindset that our abilities can be developed. So if we are one of those folks that wants to get away from it all, I don't want to deal with this change, I can't believe this teacher just left, or this student did XYZ. If that's something that we feel like is hindering the process or hindering the progress that our school is able to make as we're implementing change, recognize that that is something that we can change. We can have that growth mindset in ourselves. We also can recognize that that growth mindset is essential in our teachers and our staff and our families, that with that dedication and hard work, we can make those changes. It's worth noting, of course, that none of these things happen overnight. So as we begin with ourselves, as we begin to look at the attitudes and the activities that are possibly hindering our process and our progress, we can keep in mind that it will take time to change, but that growth mindset absolutely ensures us that we can make those changes. So we ask a question then here, how can we develop our own growth mindset? So if you would like to share into chat, you absolutely can. I will make sure to read any comments that you share there. Otherwise, I do have a few suggestions here that we'll talk about how to develop that growth mindset and how to really then use that as we begin with ourselves in our change leadership. So again, feel free to write in chat or to unmute if you'd like. Otherwise, I'll keep going with some ideas. Then you're stuck with Marie's ideas. So we'll see how that goes. Well, if you are writing something, please continue writing. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But as far as what I could find on growth mindset and how to apply that, one concept that I kept coming to was the fact that doubts can arise. If we're trying to make these big changes, if we're trying to lead out at our schools, we might have doubts about ourselves and our abilities. We might have doubts about our teachers or our students or our families. So it's natural for those doubts to arise. But what's going to become so important was really captured in this beautiful quote here by Viktor Frankl. And if you're not familiar with his work, he was a prisoner during World War II in a Nazi concentration camp. And he led a really amazing life and talked about some of those mindsets that helped him in dealing with that tremendous struggle that came from being a prisoner of war. And so his quote here says, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. And so a few key points there. He doesn't say it's a big space, right? He just says there is a space between a stimulus and that response. He doesn't say that we have a lot of power or that choosing that right response will be easy, but that it's there. And so that stimulus can be all of those different challenges that can cause those doubts to arise for us. So maybe that stimulus is that angry student who is ripping things off the walls and yelling in the hallway. Maybe that stimulus is a parent who is adamantly opposed to something that you're doing at school. Maybe that stimulus is a teacher that you've been working with and trying to develop and help, and they seem like they're not making that progress. So in between that stimulus coming in and then your response, there is that space. And so keeping in mind that that space is where we want to have that growth mindset. Remember from Carol Dweck's work, she said that it can be learned, those abilities can be developed. And so in that space, being cognitive of what do we want the response to look like? What response will lead to the outcomes that we're hoping for? And that by choosing that response, we are able to grow as well as allowing those other individuals to grow and to embrace that freedom, like Frankel says here, and hopefully start to bring about those changes that we're trying to develop with our teams. A few other thoughts on the concept of beginning with yourself. Your belief may be the single most important part of the process. If you are trying to lead out on big changes and you don't believe it's going to work, why will the people that are looking to you as their leader want to follow that? So your belief in the success that you can have, that your mission or operation can have, that those individuals can have, is the most important part of the process. Also recognize that the change you are leading, whether that's for a student, a staff member, an entire school, may be one of the most important things that you ever do. And so as you try to begin with yourself and you're leading changes, make sure that you are all in. If it's just an idea that you're playing around with, maybe that's okay to work on with a committee or a few people. But if you're going to really do some big scale changes, whether to an individual or to a school, make sure that you are all in and that you truly do begin with yourself to lead to that success. I see a great comment here. Thanks, Robin. She said that she just returned from Courageous Principles training. And one thing that stood out to build a growth mindset and resilience is gratitude. And she says that a mantra that one participant said that I appreciated is to ask ourselves, even on our worst day, what is the best thing about the worst day or event? I love that. That's a really great thought, Robin. Thank you for sharing that. And I agree. I think being able to have that gratitude, being able to find the good, and, we jokingly said we've survived all of our worst days so far, but really, recognizing that and owning that power that comes from that and finding that gratitude in that space, I think will absolutely add power to the changes and the leadership of our schools. So next we want to talk about that second concept, which is to inspire change with key behavior. And in here, we talk about the traditional way that a lot of times when we think about, I want to, bring about a change, we might think about, well, what is it I want to change? Why do I want to change it? And how? And we kind of follow that pattern. What, why, how? What, why, how? But the suggestion was made here in this change leadership thought that instead we should be asking why, then how, then what. So why do we want to change? How are we going to do it? And then, the so what that comes there. So diving into that a little deeper, I want to share this kind of box here. As we learn to ask those why questions as we're beginning to shape our ideas and beginning to bring our vision to life of the leadership and the changes that we're wanting to bring. Asking why serves a couple of really important purposes. It gives us a shared and embraced experience, as well as keeping the vision alive. Why are we doing this? Why does it matter? Why do we need to make this change, and why now? As we begin to look at how are we going to do this, that helps people to connect to the why, connects them to that purpose. Okay, well, I believe this, so how am I going to accomplish that? And then the what ends up playing a really important role to, again, provide that motivation to the why. So what happens if we don't make this change? What happens if we fail in this change? What happens, if we keep doing things the way we're doing? Why would that change matter? So again, really the big focus ends up being that why over and over again, and our how and our what then tie back to that why. As you are having these conversations and thinking about rolling out a how, a why, and a what, you want to make sure that you are including lots of different folks in those conversations. You've got individuals that need to be included. You've got teams. You might have organizations or committees at your school. You might have customers or clients. Often we refer to those as what? Our parents, our stakeholders, our students. So making sure that they are included and are able to share and embrace that vision, and then connect into the why and have that understanding of why it matters and why it matters now. It's also important to note, and I think this ties in really well to what Robin said about gratitude, that we approach each conversation also with vulnerability and curiosity. And so, we're all in. We have this vision. We know, what direction we want to go, but still being vulnerable as we're sharing, why does this matter? What happens if we don't make that change? That can be a really hard and vulnerable space to be in, to say, if we keep doing it this way, it's going to lead to this sort of outcome. And that's not where we want to be as a school. Or if we keep doing it this way, it can cause this damage or this long-term concern. Also that curiosity. Maybe you have that vision and, again, we've talked about that why. The person that you're sharing with is embracing it. They're excited about your vision, but maybe with that curiosity as to how do we do this? Why it's important. Sometimes we can then gain those perspectives from others to help us further refine our vision and help us to, see other sides of the how and the what that we may not have thought of before. So as we are seeking to inspire change with key behaviors, there's a few other things to keep in mind. We want to act decisively. So definitely we mentioned going in with that vulnerability, going in with curiosity, but be ready to make decisions. I think we've all been in an experience when we know that a change is needed, but we're not sure what we're going to do. And it can be really hard to decide, what direction are we going to go? That's where individuals will look to you as the leader to make those decisions and to get them started on that path towards that vision of what you've all now come to share and to embrace. Another thing to keep in mind is the need to get clarity. If you've got this great vision, everyone's buying in, they're excited about what you're proposing, but everyone is asking, well, where do I start? Or how do I accomplish this? What comes next? That needs to be something that you have clarity on and that you're able to describe that to the members of your community and help provide that decisiveness and that clarity. The third piece is to find answers to your questions. So remember, from our first piece where we have to begin with ourselves, if there are questions that we don't know the answer to, we're having those conversations, we're going in with vulnerability, we're going in with curiosity, but we still have questions that remain as far as our ability to do it or our team's ability to do this. We need to make sure that we're finding those answers. Those answers might be in the space of that growth mindset. And so we can then ask, what do I need to do to develop this ability? What do I need to do to develop this belief in this person, in this vision, in this team? Or it might be, again, regarding ourselves. Another concept here is we have to give up on the idea of perfection, recognizing that there are no perfect plans. Hopefully, I know I've seen Rick Vesey in some of his trainings where he talks about that 80-20 principle and how, even if you're only, 80% right, but you are committed to this vision and this shared experience, it'll still be a great decision. And so again, making sure that we give up on that idea of perfection and that we recognize that all plans are going to need us to adapt, to modify, and to overcome. But making sure that our vision is clear enough and our decisions are clear enough that when we do have to adapt, to modify, and overcome, that we're able to do those things still centered on that why and still centered on that vision that we're seeking to bring to life. We never want to lose sight of that vision or that why, because then that just leads to confusion and frustration for everyone involved. Another concept that we want to keep in mind as we're inspiring change with our key behaviors is that we need to lead out with inclusion. And with that, we want to make time for each and every employee. There are likely employees or students or stakeholders that we get along really well with, that we like to bounce ideas around with, that we feel like, we value their feedback, they value ours. Those can be easy folks to have conversations with and to get feedback from and to, workshop and think through things. But what about those employees or those students, those teams that sometimes aren't as involved, or we might feel like they disagree with everything, or they are always pushing back on XYZ. And so really making sure that we lead with inclusion and we make time for each and every one of them. We talked about that idea of curiosity and vulnerability, bringing that to the conversation so that if someone is reluctant, we can ask them, what is it that you're seeing that feels reluctant here? Or, what other questions do you have? And again, you're helping them to find those answers and to get that clarity so that they can have success in bringing your vision to life. The third concept that we wanted to talk about then is the sustaining change. So look at us here. We've reflected, we've acknowledged our own thoughts. We've looked at, beginning with ourselves. We've now got this inspiring vision that we've shared with everyone and they're excited. We've really dove deep into that why concept, and now we're figuring out those whats and those hows. And so we're ready to start making those changes. So what helps us to sustain that? Because we talked about growth mindset, we talked about changes, they take a while. It's not things that we turn on a dime most often. It's going to be in it for the long haul and really coming together and continuing. So that sustainability becomes such an important aspect. A few things that we need to acknowledge here is that change evokes emotion. That can be a positive emotion. We might be really excited. That can be a negative emotion. We might be scared. That could be that we're mad. Maybe we feel like what I'm doing is working. I don't want it to change. Maybe it makes us sad. We feel like, we're losing something as we're making this change at our school. And so recognizing that change evokes emotion and that all of those emotional responses are normal and healthy and good. And that if everyone is not excited as we move into sustaining this change, that's okay. And that we can lean into that and have that shared emotional experience with our staff, with our students, with our families, and lean into those emotions and not try to just only share the excitement, but to recognize that sadness or anger or fear are all normal and natural things. Another thing that we need to think about here is you'll see we put own mask first. Hopefully, you've been on an airplane, you've seen the presentation from the flight attendants when they talk about, if the cabin loses pressure, this little mask is going to fall down. Please put on your own mask first, then you're able to help others. So again, recognizing here that all of these things are also true for you. change might evoke strong emotions for you. It might not be excitement all of the time. And so as those changes come, remember to put on your own mask first. So making sure that you are doing those things to help take care of and support yourself so that then you can lean in and have that space to lean in and care for the others in your team or your school that are bringing these changes about. And then the final one here is to acknowledge, anticipate, and lead with the why. And so these things are important. Again, acknowledging how people feel. I think we've all been in an experience too, where, maybe we share something with someone and it gets dismissed. And that can be such a hard feeling. And so being ready to acknowledge how your team is feeling. Same with that concept of anticipation. If you are thinking through these things, you've got your own mask on, you're thinking about those emotions, you can sometimes anticipate, well, I'm going to roll out this change. I think Marie is going to feel this way. I think Lisa's going to feel this way. I think Shannon might react this way. And so, if we're anticipating the needs of those in our community, we can then help to guide how we're going to respond to them. And we can acknowledge again that those feelings are natural, normal, and valid, and that, again, we anticipated it, which gives you that even more credibility as a leader who's really set up to do this change successfully. And then again, coming back to our leading with the why. As we have those strong emotions, as we're leaning into these vulnerable conversations, make sure that everything points back to the why. I loved on our next slide, it talks about how purpose can neutralize fear. And I think with that concept, purpose can also neutralize that sadness, that madness, that even that excitement, right? Purpose can really help us to kind of bring that balance and that leveled feeling back. I might be fearful of this change, but if I really believe in the vision and the purpose that has been outlined for me, I'm going to keep moving forward, even though I'm nervous about it. I might be mad and feel like my ideas were working really well. But again, if I believe in that vision and that purpose, I can set that aside and still lean into what we're trying to create together. Another principle to keep in mind as we're sustaining change is we have to allow time for things to absorb. If we're trying to make a big change, it can't be, okay, on Monday we're doing this, and Tuesday we're doing this, and Wednesday we're doing this. We need to allow time for everyone to be able to absorb, to process, to feel those emotions, and then be able to express how they're feeling about these things. And that's where, as leaders, that's our opportunity to really lean in and listen and learn to our teams, listen and learn what's going well, what questions do we have. And in our presentation, they pointed out that some of the most common challenges that we'll encounter, especially from our other slide, if you're wanting to anticipate what might be coming, these are the three most common challenges that come up when you're trying to lead big change efforts: apathy, animosity, and self-doubt. And so thinking about those things, that apathy can come. Maybe our team feels like, oh, it's another change. Here we are. What will it be next week? What will it be next month? We're always changing everything. And so they're afraid maybe to buy in, or they're skeptical to buy into it. So if we have that apathy amongst our team, how can we neutralize that? Again, it comes back to really clearly sharing that why, that purpose, and making sure, like we talked about a few slides back, that we have that clarity and that decisiveness. That clarity and decisiveness will help us in fighting the feeling to constantly be changing or adjusting, which if we're always trying the next new thing, that can definitely lead to that apathy among our school. There might be that feeling of animosity. This can come, I think, as we mentioned, especially if people are feeling like what we're doing is working. What we're doing is the way we've always done things. It might come, people are feeling maybe offended, hey, like, you don't like what I've done? Like, why not? And so, again, how do we overcome that? We have to tie back to that why. And if we're anticipating this, maybe we validate. We say, here's the things X, Y, and Z that have gone so well. We're not getting rid of that. We want to validate that and continue those things. Here's the things that are changing, A, B, C. And so we're able to provide that clarity and help our team see that there doesn't need to be that animosity, and that we are really helping to further grow and further add to the good that they're already doing. And that last one, that self-doubt, unfortunately, I think sometimes among teachers, maybe this can be one of our hardest ones to overcome. I think so often in the teaching profession, we love big and we have those whole hearts in our work. And so sometimes there can be that self-doubt, am I able to accomplish this? Am I, strong enough to do this? Do I have enough time to do these things? Do I understand enough? And so I think also helping to mitigate those feelings of self-doubt can come in some professional learning. Again, those, here's those things that you're doing great, and showing that you're truly recognizing the work your team does, helping to validate that they are capable, they can do these great things, and that you have every confidence in your team, which is why you've, asked them to embrace and embark in this change journey. If you have someone that is really struggling with that self-doubt, you might invite them to lean into that concept of growth mindset, and to really recognize that everything can be learned, everything, we can have those abilities that we can develop. It might take time, but it is absolutely possible. A few more thoughts about sustaining change. They said we really want to make sure that we're living in the space here between that firm and flexible. And I think as we walked through some of those feelings that people might have, we also can see the importance of really staying in this space between firm and flexible. Firm is where we show that we're committed to this change. And if not, that's really going to erode engagement and lose trust. We mentioned if you're that school or that person or that team that's always jumping from thing to thing to thing to thing, trying every new thing that comes through, every different grant, every different program, that can get really challenging really fast. I think in some ways, as charter schools, we have quite an advantage here because even though we might be making changes, we have our charter documents that really root us and ground us in what we're doing at our schools. And so making sure that whatever change ties back to that why, ties into that charter agreement, which is that anchor for you. And that as long as it, fits within there, we can stay firm and we can be committed to that change. We do, though, on the flip side of that, have to be flexible. With that, as questions, as concerns, maybe something sounded really good at 2 a.m. or written down on paper, and as you're actually bringing it to life, like there's not enough time in the day or enough money at the school or enough, teachers to go around to really bring this to life. And so as we have to be flexible with things when we get into the real world circumstances, it's going to be important that, again, we revisit that why. Ultimately, we can find whatever flexibility we need as long as we're committed to that why and how are we going to bring this to pass. We can readdress concerns. So again, making sure that we're still decisive, we still have that clarity, that we're there to address those concerns as they come up, and but yet remain firm, right? I'm going to address this concern, but we're also still committed to this change. We're not going to take a concern and be like, oh, you're right, like throw it all out. We're going to start over, because then again, that erodes that engagement and it loses that trust. Also, again, making sure that we adjust based off the needs of our students and that we're really aligned to that why. Being able to keep these in mind with our flexibility while remaining committed to our changes is going to give us, again, that leadership that we need in those times to be firm but flexible and to be able to sustain the change at our school. one more thing we want to talk about under the sustaining change part. We wanted to talk about how important communication is. Communication has a crucial impact in trying to sustain changes. I was on the marketing seminar earlier, and they talked again about communication and how important it is with whatever you're trying to accomplish, whether it's a big change, a small change, sustaining what you're already doing. Communication is so, so important. The three concepts that we want to share with communication, the first one is to share as much as you can as early as you can. The better that you do that, the more that you're able to control the story and control any rumors or gossip that gets out there. I know when I was a school director, and sometimes something crazy would happen, and we would always talk about on our administrative team that we need to make sure that we are sending something out to our parents as soon as we possibly can, so that we are controlling the narrative. I would rather have a parent read an email from me as a school leader to read what happened during the day before the kid comes home and shares, hey, here's what happened at school today, mom and dad. Kind of on a comical note with that, there was one time that our school had a lockdown situation, and everything was fine. We were able to then, come out of lockdown. We messaged the parents, but for some reason, a rumor got started in the middle school. Those middle school students, that like one wing of the school had blown up with a bomb, and it was so silly, and it felt like, look at the building, guys, like there's no bomb here. But again, being able to control that narrative, so I didn't have 50 emails from parents saying, I can't believe, the school was bombed today. So again, making sure that we're sharing as much as we can, as early as we can, and controlling that narrative that comes out. The second piece there, always be transparent. Make sure that we're sharing the positive as well as the negative. This can feel really hard to do. As a director, I had lots of opportunities with this, especially as we would do our yearly survey. And hopefully we've modeled that even amongst us as your authorizer. When we shared just at last month's meeting about, hey, here's the survey we gave, and here's the things you said that we're doing well, and here's the things we're doing not so well. And here's how we're going to improve upon those things. And so not shunning away from sharing, that full transparency. Here's what's going good at our school. Here's what we're going to work on. Here's what you said as parents, or here's what you said as teachers. And really leaning into that helps you with that credibility and being able to have that impact that you want for that sustainable change. And then that third piece is being consistent with all of your channels. So I think I mentioned in the marketing seminar, they talked about this. When you're sharing, maybe you take and you first start with something that you're typing up to an email. Then you take a little bit of that and put that onto your Instagram and your Facebook. And then you maybe cut it down a little shorter and get it onto your Twitter or your TikTok, or, you can always share those same types of things across all of your channels. And the reason that that's important is that sometimes you might have a parent that is only on Instagram or only on TikTok or only reads the emails you've sent. So really making sure that you're getting your same messaging to all of those different people in the ways that they choose to interact with your school. This also, I think, becomes important at your school. If you're talking to your teachers and saying one thing, and then talking to your aides and saying something different, and talking to the parents and giving them a different idea, that can be really confusing. And that, I think, definitely starts that rumor mill going, and they're trying to put all these pieces together. Marie told us this, or Marie said that. Well, what about this? And so again, as long as we are being consistent across channels, whether those are, social media channels, whether that's our email, whether that's in-person channels, as we're dealing with each other, and we're being transparent, we're sharing as much as we can, as early as we can, that consistency will then help us to be able to communicate effectively and help I would say put out confusion, or stomp out confusion, so that everyone is clear and can have those conversations that don't lead to gossip as they're finding inconsistencies in what's been shared. And so in closing, we just wanted to talk about, again, we've looked at those three different key elements essentially of our effective leadership and effective change. And so that first one again is begin with yourself. Make sure it's something that you're bought into, that you believe in. If you don't, remember there is growth mindset, and people can change, people can learn new things. That second piece is to inspire change with key behaviors. So making sure that everything you do is focused on that why. The why gives you so much power. The why is going to be what helps neutralize those hard emotions. The why is going to be what motivates people and gets them on board with your ideas and willing to do the hard work that you're asking them to do. And then third, we have that sustain the change. So once it's happening, remember that it's normal, it's natural to feel frustrated, to feel sad, to feel confused. And so as those things come up, we stay firm but flexible in our leadership as we adapt and continue to stay focused and rooted in that why, rooted in our charter agreements, and able to really bring to pass those ideas that we are excited about and that we want to introduce at our school. And so that brings us to the end of our training presentation. So I'll pause for a minute. If there are any questions, again, you can put them in chat, you can unmute, and we'll stop for some questions. If we don't have questions, I will move on to our In Case You Missed It October edition. So you have all the latest and greatest communication from the state. But I will pause for a minute to see if there are any questions before we go on to that. Oh, Brenda asked, what was the name of the book that this was pulled from? It was actually a course on Pluralsight. And I believe that the state has free licenses for all of our school leaders. So if that's something that you would like a license for Pluralsight, I think we can get that for you. So just, email me, I can get that to you. But it was a course on Pluralsight. So Pluralsight has all sorts of different courses. Some are about leadership. Some are like how to write queries if you're looking at data, then everything in between, how to use Teams, how to use Zoom, Excel, like very advanced Excel. So a lot of really great things on that website. All right, so I don't see any other questions. I'm going to quickly change screens here so we can get to our In Case You Missed It and send you off with some fall announcements. And I think we might get out of here a little early today. So that's always an exciting bit, right? Though I do love spending my afternoons with our directors. So, okay. We have our In Case You Missed It October 2022 edition. Again, these are all updates that you have had emailed to you from the state or from us, but in case any of them are not on your radar, we're hoping to jog your memory or also give you that great gift of delegation where you can send this out to others to help you with. So these first three slides are all updates from USBE. So the first one is that there are free virtual trainings on functional behavior assessment of absenteeism. So if that's something that interests you, their registration is now open. It closes October 27th, and then the trainings will be taking place in November. There's also an assessment directors meeting coming up the end of October, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. If you do go to our website, the utahscsb.org, and you do click on the trainings and events type link, that will show all of the different directors meeting, assessment directors meeting, curriculum directors, every type of meeting that USBE is doing or that we're doing. And so you can always find that information there. If you need links to any of those, let us know and we're happy to find those for you. There was sent to the curriculum directors a symposium coming up from the Aurora Institute. It's all virtual, and that's happening again at the end of the month, October 24th to 26th. So if you're looking for some great professional learning for your curriculum directors, you might want to consider sending them to that. There is a suicide prevention playbook that came out from USBE. Andrea Hood is the lead on that. And so if you have questions on that or need a copy of that, Andrea would be the one to reach out to. We've got her email and her cell number there for you. Continuing on, oh, so sorry, from USBE. Right now, there is a focus group that's considering a redesign of Utah's graduation requirements for K-12 education. So if that's something that you would like to participate in that focus group, or you have some teachers that feel strongly about that and would like to help participate, or other community members, you can submit your registration for the focus group by October 21st. Literacy directors, again, I mentioned that those meetings for each month will show up on our training calendar so that you don't have to memorize this and try to keep that in mind. But there was a change to their meeting dates. They did send them out for the rest of the year. So November 15th, January 26th, and March 21st. There is a survey that is in accordance with state law that is looking at dropout prevention and recovery. So to make sure that you're in compliance with that state law, just make sure you fill out that survey. Do no later than 5 p.m. on Friday, October 21st. And then there's a materials commission that needs some new members. I believe they were looking for a couple of general public members, as well as I think a secondary teacher, maybe an elementary or an administrator. The email had all the details on who exactly they're looking for. But if you or someone you know would like to be on the materials commission, they will need to get their application in also by October 21st. I was noticing as I was putting these slides together that October 21st seems like a very important day at USBE. So if you remember nothing else and just all these announcements, October 21, there's a lot happening and a lot that's due that day. There is also some free MANT de-escalation trainings. I know a couple of schools have reached out about how do they get those MANT trainings. So there is a free registration for that if that's something you need for your school. And the dates range all the way between October 17th to June 7th. So you can definitely find some time that works for you. They did add new sessions to that. So you should be able to find something. If you can't, let them know. I'm sure they'd be happy to add yet another session to help you out with that MANT training. There's a Section 504 Canvas course that's now been created. So if you are doing 504s, because we know charter directors wear many, many hats, or if you've got someone new at your school that's doing 504s, you might want to consider that Canvas course so that you can help lead those in the best way possible. It is in Canvas. I do not have the Canvas number for that, but if you reach out to Holly Bell, her information is there, and she can get you into that course. And then the last one from USBE was that they are currently seeking public comment on the revision of the Utah State Every Student Succeeds Act, so the ESSA state plan. So if you have comments you want to share, if you have teachers that want to share, or community members, now through October 20th, that is open for public comment. And then ongoing, just from us here at the State Charter School Board, Employee of the Month, we will start with our recognitions next month. So I'm very excited to kick this off again. I was looking at our forms. So far, we've had 2 nominations, which is fantastic. And those 2 look like some really great candidates. But we would love to get many, many more. So this is for anyone that works at a charter school. We'll recognize them in director's meeting. We have a small Amazon gift card that we will give them, and immense praise and kudos to your school. So really exciting. If you've got some great folks, which I know all of you do have great people at your school, please nominate them or consider nominating them for Employee of the Month. They can also be nominated by board members or by other members at your school. So if you do want to share that link, out to your school community, even parents, they can happily nominate too. I would really love to see, as many nominations as we can come in and really just celebrate all of the great people that are working in our schools. We also wanted to provide just an ongoing update. I was talking to Jennifer and to our board chair, Brian Bowles, about the School Readiness Board. And this is a board that works with kindergarten students and preschool students and helping them to be ready. And we have a charter representative on that board. And one thing that has come up over the last few months has been an inconsistency in the accountability numbers that districts are held to, as well as what charter schools are held to. And so there's a lot of advocacy going on behind the scenes saying, pause, this is not right. Charter schools are public schools, and we should hold those accountability standards the same and not give lower accountability to school districts and higher accountability to charter schools. And so just so you know, there's lots of advocacy going on behind the scenes, and making sure that we are sharing and we'll continue to advocate for charter schools. If you've been on the public meeting notice website recently, you will notice it is new and different and changed. Hopefully that's a good thing. If whoever posts your minutes has some questions about that or is not quite sure about how to navigate the new website, there is a YouTube link there. It's about a 10-minute video, so a pretty quick watch. So make sure that if you are posting or you have a board secretary or someone who's posting, make sure that they are aware of those changes. And if they need help, check out this YouTube video. As always, we love pictures of things that are going on at your school. We want to keep our website updated, our newsletters updated. So if you have some great pictures and you have the permissions that those can be shared, please send them our way. You can send those to my email, and we'll make sure that it gets to the right place and recognize those cute kids that you're working with or those awesome teachers. Also, we are trying as the State Charter School Board to be much more active on social media. We are currently on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. So if you're on social media and you want to tag us, we're happy to check out your posts, see those great things you're doing. We can reshare things. Again, we just are excited to be on there and to be sharing great things. And then I see Ben, thank you for catching. I apparently have a little typo here. He says that November 13th is a Sunday. And so I am doubting any of us want to come to our next directors meeting on a Sunday. So my apologies, I will get that corrected. It should say Monday, November 14th. Thank you, Ben, for catching that. We are 12:30 to 3:30 over Zoom. I do know there was a request that we look at possibly doing an in-person meeting. So I'll probably send out a short little survey and see if we want to, try to get together maybe for the holiday, for winter, or looking ahead to the spring. So be watching for that. If that's something that interests you, or if you are loving the Zoom and want to keep that up, we'd love to get some feedback on that. So next directors meeting is still over Zoom, and it's Monday, November 14th. And that should be it for our announcements. So if you have any questions, if you want to network about anything, go over any concerns or problems of practice, we're happy to stay on. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day, and thanks for being here.
I have one, Marie, so I'll wait.
Okay, thank you, Brett.